I haven't thought of it yet, but well, everyone, welcome to the first podcast, Terrence Williamson author podcast. Today we have my brother Dustin Williamson on.
Hi,
He's
everyone.
he's from Burnaby, Vancouver. He left me alone in cold, flat Saskatchewan.
Yeah, it's not Burnaby, Vancouver, Terrence. It's
Oh,
Burnaby, BC.
yes, sorry. So, stupid question. Burnaby is a suburb of Vancouver.
I don't even really know, to be honest. I think it's a city. I'm
Oh,
pretty sure it's a
okay.
city, but it's right next to Vancouver.
How
There's
big is it?
no,
Do you know how big Burnaby is?
like, how many people are in it, or
Yeah,
like geographically.
both. Let's do both.
I know neither.
Good. Well, it's a good thing we're not here to talk geography
Yeah.
or demographics.
What are we here to talk about, Terrence?
Well, I thought that we would talk about writing and the process that we use. Now, you have a book. How long ago was it that you released your book?
Oh, geez, probably like 4 years ago, I think.
Is it?
Yeah. So it's a novella. Is that how you say that?
No,
Novella?
novella, yeah.
Novella. So I think it's 50,000 words. So
Mm.
it's kind of tiny for like it would look like a baby compared to those massive novels you got on the shelf behind you. But I just like always wanted to write a book. I think even before you were interested in writing, I had always talked about writing. So that's why I think it's interesting that you're the author now.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
I
remember
just
you and our friend Ryan always going back and forth on a project that you're thinking of doing.
Yeah, so that was a trilogy I had planned when I was a kid. So I think I first started getting interested in writing when I was like 7.
Mm.
Back when we lived in that townhouse, I just started like writing that first story, and
Yeah, that's right. I
but
remember that.
I think it took me 5 years because I think it was by the time I was 13, I finished it. It was 200 handwritten pages.
Wow.
I made it all up on the spot, so there was
Mm.
no planning. I don't remember anything about it really,
Mm.
except I think the main character's name was Guilfred,
Yeah.
because I asked you for a character's name, and that's what you gave me
The-
when we were like 7 and 9.
Remember that one time you asked me for a character's name and I gave you a character from Lord of the Rings?
Yeah. No, you used to do that a lot. I asked you, I was like, I need a name for a character. And you were like, Glorfindale. And I was like, that's so silly. And then I was reading the Silmarillion later, and I was like, wait. And then there was another time too where I was like, when I initially started working on my story,
Mm.
I think it was like the trilogy. So after I wrote this like big book, I started working on the trilogy,
Mm.
and I was thinking like, oh, it'd be cool to make like a map and stuff. But then I was like, but nobody does that. And that was before I knew anything about Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
And then I remember you telling me about Lord of the Rings. And you and Dad went to watch the first film, I think. And
Mm.
so then I was like learning more about that. I was like, oh, it is super normal for people to like get really into world building. So I
Mm.
started working on that. And I asked you for a name for a mountain range. And you said
Oh.
the Misty Mountains. And I was like,
Oh
it's
no.
like, that's so cool.
Oh no. Oh. Oh, yeah, I remember when me and Dad went to the first one. It scared me to death.
Really? You were
Oh,
terrified?
it was terrifying. I can't remember how old I was then. Because what is it? It's 20 years old now, Lord of the Rings.
I don't remember.
So I'd have been like 13.
Oh,
But back then, I remember like that's when Gladiator was considered gory.
yeah. Well, I was surprised that Dad even took you to it, because
Mm.
I just saw the trailer for it and I was like, oh, it's another one of those bad movies. And then
Mm.
Dad was like, well, it was written by a Christian, so we should go
Yeah.
watch a bunch of things get their heads cut off.
I remember for the second one, I skipped out on basketball to go see the. Yeah, our coach was not very happy with me.
Yeah, I can't imagine he would have been.
Yeah, but
Yeah, we played for the same coach, so.
Speaking of J.R. Tolkien, do you know that he, from what I've heard, I think this is right, but he made up The Hobbit pretty impromptu.
No, I don't think I knew that.
So,
The story I heard was that he started telling his children a story.
hmm,
He like made it up on the spot, at least the first part.
that one seems more believable to me. The story that I've heard was that he was marking students' exams. So first, what he did is he made up a language, and I think this was way before he even started Lord of the Rings or anything like that. He made up a language. I think is the Elven language. 'Cause he's
Mhm.
I think he really liked Finnish, so the Elven language is really based on Finnish languages.
It's such a strange thing to do first. I'm gonna make a language.
Right. Well, I saw a meme because they're talking about all these people create this world and then create languages, but he created a language and built the world around it.
Yeah, there's like a meme where it's like he created the language and then wrote a children's book.
Yeah. Well, the story I heard was that he's so bored with marking papers that he just wrote down in a hole in the ground lived a hobbit, and it wasn't a
Oh,
nasty, stinky, dark hole, but like I can't remember how the rest of it goes. But from there, it just kind of went on.
and did he make up the word hobbit, or was that already lore from other like classic folk tales?
I don't know that one.
Because I know he made up a lot of words. Like
Yeah.
wraith, I think is his creation.
Oh, is it?
Because yeah, I heard some people talking about that on a podcast, I think. Or
Hmm.
maybe it was in the DVD extras for
Hmm.
one of the Lord of the Rings films. But they talked about how like wraith was his combination of
Hmm.
wrath and wreath, I think. So it was like
Okay.
angry and twisted. He came up with
Right.
wraith.
Interesting. Yeah, those behind the scenes DVDs are fantastic.
Yeah.
Kelsey and I used to watch them so much. Which is my wife, for everyone who doesn't know.
Yeah. So, anyways, back to writing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So some of the things that I kind of wanted to mention about, like, if we're talking about writing processes and stuff like that, something I wanted to mention that I think would be helpful for anybody who's trying to write a book that helped
Hmm.
me with my first novella. So,
Hmm.
excluding the 200-page by hand written thing that I did as a kid because that wasn't published and isn't very good. It was just like a exercise that took me 5 years.
Hmm.
And then also the trilogy that I had started working on. It like myself and Ryan, like we had spent so much time working on it and it became this big thing. And there were like it was a trilogy, but then there were also a bunch of short stories that we wanted to write to supplement them.
Hmm.
And it just got to be like such a big, daunting project that I didn't even know where to start. And I would sit down and write. I wrote a lot of like world building stuff, but I never actually like did anything towards finishing or working on the book. And it was so sporadic. I'd work on it like a couple days every few months.
Hmm.
So it wasn't until I was working at EA Electronic Arts because I'm currently a video game designer, and I had it was in between contracts. So there's a lot of contracting that goes on in the industry, and so I had 3 months off. EA was like, We're gonna let you go for 3 months because your contract is done, but we're gonna need you again in 3 months." So I had work lined up, and I was like, "Well, what do I do for 3 months?" So it sure would be nice to write a book. And my manager at the time actually said, "Yeah, when I took my first sabbatical, I wrote a book." And he gave me some tips. What he said to do was every day, reread what you wrote from the day before, and you either spend your day changing the stuff that you just wrote or writing a new section. Um, and the inspiration for the book had actually come from playing Dark Souls. I know that you don't really play Dark Souls, but well, you played the
Hmm.
board game with us, so
Yeah, it was
it's kind of
fun.
it's kind of got this like dark um
Souls.
Dark Souls. Yeah. This dark, like lonesome night kind of feeling. And I'm a sucker
Hmm.
for medieval fantasy. And I knew when I came up with this idea, I was like, this is just Knights and Dragons stuff. And I remember telling you about it. I was like, I want to
Hmm.
go, I want to write a book that isn't super daunting. I just want to see if I can do it. So let me pick a really generic storyline as like inspiration. Just keep things super simple. So there's a
Hmm.
knight and there's a dragon. And that's like as far as I got. Um, Before I even decided to write the book, though, I had written this one pager like a year before. That was just like inspiration I had from playing Dark Souls. And so I took that and just like expanded it into this book. And I think I took a couple months before I finished my contract with EA, and I just did a bunch of world building in my free time. And I told friends about it, and they gave me their feedback. And then so in the 3 months that I had working on this book, I think I spent like the first 2 weeks or first week or something like that, just like coming up with an outline. So I came up with an entire outline of how the whole story would go. And that really helped me, because after that, I felt really free to write whatever I wanted without being like, where's the story going? What happens next? It's like, I know what happens next. Now I just get to create this scene. And I was actually inspired a little bit by the snowflake method, which I had found online. And I didn't do the snowflake method like to a T. I just took some things from it. But the snowflake method is like, first write like your 1-line sentence, a 15-word sentence about what your story's about, and then expand it into a paragraph, and then expand it into a full page, and then do that for each of your main characters. And then you just like keep growing out and out and out until you have this like full spreadsheet of each of the chapters, how many pages they're going to be. And then from there, the thing I liked about that is then you can just write, what's going to happen next, but then you just like, how does it happen? That's where your creativity gets to come out. And it's hard to be creative when you're stressing, right? So I took that method, just the part where I was like, I'm going to create an outline so I know what's going to happen next. And then I just get to fill it in with the fun stuff of like how things happen. So yeah, it was a really relaxed schedule. I wasn't working, so I would write from anywhere between 3 to 6 hours a day, and usually about like 3 pages a day. It wasn't a super fast writer, and it was one of these things where I just wanted to see if I could do it. And one of the things that really helped me too was my study at Vancouver Film School, which is where I studied video game design. And what I learned at video game design completely changed how I pursued creative projects. And one of those main things was every video game ships with tons of bugs. And the developers know that. They just have to decide, like, because the deadline's coming up, eventually they have to decide what does not get fixed.
Right.
So there's a bunch of stuff that's not finished that gets shipped. And that like changed something in me because I'm a perfectionist. So anytime I tried to write something before, I was like, this is so much work. I'm never going to be able to do this. It's really intimidating. But this project was like, what if I just start writing and it doesn't have to be perfect and it can suck? I just want to get it done. I want to see if I can do it. And yeah, so that's how I ended up with this novella. And when I first released it, I really liked it. Reading it now, I'm kind of like, yeah, I see how I could have done a lot of things differently and like expand it and stuff.
Yeah. That's a challenge when you read your books again. It's like, oh man, I should have done that. I should have done that. Because it's funny, like when I look back at the first book I did, I actually unpublished it just maybe a month ago because I was like, this is too bad. It's too
really?
bad. But some other books that I did, like the Mistress of Auschwitz series or trilogy, sorry, and then the Daughters of Marburg, which just came out a month ago, I can kind of see, even now as I'm doing my new series on Matahari, I can see how far I've come. So what I do for my writing process is I tried to do the snowflake thing where you outline it all and then kind of fill it in, but it never worked for me because the path always changed. So what I did was I kind of did a very loose general outline of the series and things I want to talk about. So for example, I'm just taking Matahari, the book I'm working on right now. I'm starting with her childhood. So I kind of just do little points. This is what I want to talk about. This is what I want to talk about. This chapter might be this chapter might be that. But it changes because as I start writing it and there's different characters that develop or different things that might improve the story, I start focusing more on those and it goes in that direction instead.
So
but
you follow your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really strange because my writing style, it's so subjective to the person who's doing the writing. So there's a lot of different outlines you can try and follow that just might not work for you. What worked for me, and it took a long time to get this process to a point where I can almost write a chapter in one go and that's it, and I don't need to do any more editing.
Oh, wow.
I generally do I think it's good to do at least 2 or 3 edits, but after that part, I'm okay right now. Like the first book I wrote took me a year and a half, and the second book was a year. Then it kind of went a little bit shorter, and now I'm on the point where I can write a book within a month or two.
That's crazy.
Yeah, well, so the process was I just start with garbage, so I just get my words into the page.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I first started doing that, like the first historical fiction I did about Josephus, um, it was pretty much pure garbage because like I don't know if this is a cheesy metaphor or not, but it's kind of like a potter working with some clay. Like when you first do it, you just
It's already cheesy.
yeah.
Go ahead
Okay,
though.
I'll power through this.
Okay.
So it's like you just put the clump onto the wheel, right? So at first it's just a clump, and that's what it is. And so when you first forming it, of course, it forms pretty ugly. But then as you get more experiences, you learn how to form it quicker and nicer in shortest period of time.
Sure, yeah.
It's a really cheesy metaphor.
I kind of get what you're saying though, because I kind of wanted to jump off the point where you said you just like had to get the words on the page, and like I guess one way of thinking of it too is like you can't shape the clay if it's not on the wheel,
Mm,
and so that's something I was like, okay, I just need to write, and I found a lot of the time because it's so much easier to like if you write a bunch of garbage and then like with the method I was using, the next day I would come back and read through the previous day and I would be like, even as I was writing it sometimes like this is total garbage. But I
mm,
knew that it's going to be so much easier to like clean this up and make it nicer if the words
mhm,
are already on the page than it
mhm,
is going to be for me to try and figure out how I can make it better
mhm.
before putting it on the page.
Yeah.
I found it really useful to like, I'm just going to write this and
Mm.
I don't like it, but then tomorrow I'll make it better. And
Yeah,
yeah.
agreed. And I think what also helped me was sometimes I'd focus on the entire project. So I'd write something and then I look back at it. So I do that as well. I write it and then the next day I look at it. And then what I do is I read through it myself, try and fix any errors, and then I read it to Kelsey. And then she'll tell me, this needs to change, or this should be good, or this is good. Focus more on that. She's great at doing the content editing that way. And it's good to talk it out loud because I find that reading it is one thing, but when you speak it, you can catch other things that you might have missed.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's doing it with a few different mediums. There wasn't someone else in my writing group suggest even recording yourself and then listening to your recording, but that's a bit. I don't like hearing myself.
And here you
So
are doing a podcast.
exactly. But what I found was instead of focusing on the huge project of an entire book, what I would do is I'd just say, okay, just write a good paragraph or just write a good sentence. And then what happened is I got a good sentence that inspires the next sentence. And then after that, I've got a good paragraph. And so, okay, so I got a good paragraph. Now focus on, just doing another good paragraph. And by the end of you just focusing on writing a good one or two paragraphs, you end up with a good page.
Right. Yeah.
And instead of worrying about the huge, oh, I got to make a good book, just worry about the paragraph, and then from there it usually trickles down.
Yeah. Usually, I mean, with anything, baby steps really helps. But with a project like a book, it is really intimidating because that's a whole like 50,000 words is a lot of words, even though that's not even like a full novel. For
Right.
most people, to write 50,000 words is really intimidating.
Hmm.
So it's really important to break it down into small steps. Um, yeah. So like, there's also because one of the things that really slowed me down with my project was it was really important for the book that I was writing to make it sound like it was like a legend,
Hmm.
like a medieval legend, um, or like a fantasy legend kind of thing. And so what I focused on was I don't think it's Old English because Old English is like I don't actually know what type of English it is. It might be Middle English, but it's
Hmm.
definitely not modern English. Like it's I tried to be very uh I don't know what the right word is, like eloquent
Hmm.
in my language, and some of it's like almost I'm attempting to be like poetic and like have rhythm in the
Hmm.
way that I'm speaking. And I tried like every normal sentence that I wrote, like he got on his horse. Like I would rewrite that and try and make it sound more like, I don't know. I'm not even gonna try right now, but yeah, just like, so that really slowed me down a lot. And then it wasn't until, because like my only, this surprises a lot of people, when I was like, yeah, I really like writing, but I hate
Mm,
reading.
mm,
So the books I had read that had sort of given me, like, been my market research, were like Children of Hurin
mhm.
by Tolkien, and then I had read The Silmarillion, which is not a great read for somebody who doesn't like reading, and or for anybody really. And anybody who wants a good story should probably
Yeah.
not read The Silmarillion. And then I had read this book called The Night, which I think was originally in French and then translated to English. So I actually hadn't done very much market research.
Mm,
So I did kind of feel like I wanted to write it this way, but I didn't know another way to write.
mm,
And it wasn't until I started. So audiobooks are my thing now, because I just discovered them recently.
mm,
And there's so much, they're really good for people who don't like reading, because you can get all your market research stuff in,
mhm,
and just enjoy a good story without having to sit down and read a book. So
mhm.
I've been listening to the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson. I think that's his last name, or maybe it's Anderson. I'm embarrassed now that I can't remember, but yeah, and the way that he tells his stories is just very much in plain English.
Oh.
And so that was kind of like, oh, you can do medieval fantasy and sound like a normal person. So I
Mm,
think if I were to do it again, as much fun as it was to like write in more of like a prose style, it was a lot of extra work. And that's partly why the book is so short, because it
mm,
took me a lot longer to write
mm,
normal sentences than it should have. So I think in the future, if I were to write more, and I do have some ideas planned, but I'm just not sure if I have the writing. Was kind of like, I wanted to see if I could do it, and then I did it. And now that I've done it, I'm like, do I want to do it again? I don't know yet. So you kind of
mm.
need to be sure that you want to finish a book before you
Yeah.
start working on it.
Yeah. I know.
But if, yeah,
It's an interesting thing because I have so many ideas for different books that I want to do, but when I actually sit down to execute them, it's like, okay, so I got a good concept, but that's all I have.
right, yeah,
So, there's like everything I've done has basically been historical fiction. There's a few sci-fis that I'd like to write. I
yeah.
don't know if I'll ever get into that.
You were telling me about, so you should, if you're okay with it, you should say some of the concepts you had, because I liked some of the ideas that you had for your
Well,
sci-fis.
I would like to develop them a bit more, and then
Okay,
have because I've been thinking about the one that I was looking at doing, and I've changed quite a bit in it.
okay.
So I might want to get a more resound. Is that right word? Resounded?
No,
That's not a right word.
well-rounded probably.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Well-rounded concept before I try it again.
For two people
Um,
that write, we're really bad at talking. Like,
yeah. Well, here's the thing. Okay, so I love Christopher Hitchens. Love reading what he's written. Uh, and I watch tons of his YouTube videos, his lectures, his debates, all that stuff. I don't agree with most of what he says, but he's a wonderful wordsmith, and he's so articulate. And one of the things that he said that scared me to death was, he said, in order to be a good writer, you have to be a good talker. And I was like, oh my goodness, because I'm naturally not articulate, and it
no,
takes a lot
you
for me to
definitely are not.
know, which is kind of strange because sometimes people read the books and like it's taken me a long time to get to this point, but there are some things in there that it's pretty good. Well, feels weird to say this, but it's pretty good writing at some points. I see like there's obviously areas where I
That was
can.
hard for you to say.
How
Oh,
do I?
I like my stuff.
Well, that's the
Sorry,
thing.
everyone.
Like, so going back to what you're saying about like the market research, like I hate reading historical fiction. I hate reading fiction books. I hate
Mm,
it. I like watching the movies and stuff. It's easy to do that. You just throw it on. But I hate reading fiction books. I hate reading historical fiction. But I write it, and I love writing it, which is really strange. That it's if I'm reading historical fiction, I don't want to be just the passively experiencing the story. I want to be the one who's shaping it.
Oh,
It's the same
interesting.
like when we go to like a live show for music, right? I want to be the one on stage. I don't want to be just sitting there watching someone else play.
No,
It's not really.
I was thinking the same thing when because I'm similar with music too.
Hmm.
When I really like writing music. I don't really like listening to it very much. I
Hmm.
find it hard to find music that I want to listen to
Yeah.
unless unless I write it. And then I'm like, this is the so a lot of the time when I create stuff, it's because
Hmm.
I'm trying to find something that I find entertaining that I'm going to enjoy. And um and I'm like, well, I can't find something that I really want, so I'll just make it myself and then it's exactly the way I want it and then I can enjoy it that way.
Exactly. And I don't think it stems from any like arrogant side as oh, my books are better than this or my music's better than that. It's just I want to be active. I want to be the one participating, not passive.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, yeah. But I did read a historical fiction. I'm reading one right now, but it's pretty historical fiction. Dante's Divine Comedy.
Okay.
I just finished Inferno this morning.
Yeah.
It's intense.
What do you mean by intense?
Well, so I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the concepts of hell and heaven and purgatory and all that. And I was thinking, well, let's just look at it from a psychological standpoint rather than it being material. If I just look at it from the psychological standpoint, then it's true. Um, it's like a psychological truth. You know, there's objective truth and scientific truth and moral truth. I think this is what I'd throw in as a psychological truth.
I don't even
maybe
know what that means. But continue. I'm
maybe
interested.
it's more along the lines of moral truth. Just in the sense, for example, when he's in hell, he comes to the one circle, and I can't remember which circle it is, but it's a circle where they're all the souls are angry. So they're just filled with wrath, like they're very angry people in life. And so when they, that was their sin, was wrathfulness, right? So what happens is in hell, they're in this boiling, if I got this right and if I read it correctly, because it's really old English. So sometimes
Fair
it's like
enough.
some of the words they use don't mean the same they do here, but, or now, I mean. So, um, so these people who are wrathful are basically given into their wrath. So they're permanently wrathful, right? Because they're in this boiling red, I think it's red, maybe boiling blood, right? Blood pit. And there's always wrathful. So it's like if you look at it from a psychological perspective, when you give into anger, when someone is always angry, that's kind of like they're creating their own little hell. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
they're always giving into anger. They're always allowing themselves to be wrathful, and they're staying in that boiling pit, right?
Right.
Um, yeah.
That's the end of your thought.
Well, I'm trying to think if I want to say something else about it or not,
Oh,
but I might leave it. Well, no, I'll go. I'll say this. So it's like even like when Lucian passed, I was pretty angry,
yeah.
and I had to. I was talking to a therapist, and she's meant well, and she's a really nice person. I don't have anything against her. I just don't think she was in the right capacity to help a parent who lost their child. Because I was saying, I had a lot of trouble with anger, and well, like I went to her and I said, yeah, I'm very angry, and I don't like being angry around my wife and daughter. I'd never hit them or hurt them or anything like that. It's just the fact that you know I'm angry around them creates such an not a very pleasant environment for them or for me. And so she said, well, because I expressed that anger physically. So I'll slam something, I'll slam a door, I'll punch a wall.
Yeah.
I broke our door. Was that a few years ago? had to get it, our bathroom door, just a cheap thing. But anyways,
No, you're
um,
really strong.
yeah, thank you. So she said to find a safe space, like just a corner, and then take a wet cloth and throw it against the wall and stuff like that. Throw your express your anger that way. And I
And
think
something that's like not damaging and not destructive kind of thing.
yeah, and I think the intent was good, but the execution was really poor because what happened is it just created in my mind um, an outlet for the anger. So the anger, it's kind of like the anger is its own personality. in a sense, where the anger is like, okay, well, I'm allowed to exist now. It's not a bad thing for me to exist. I don't know if I'm articulating this well enough, but essentially, like, let's say anger is in the mind is kind of like addictive as cocaine is.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Wow.
So basically, what happens is I was feeding that addiction by allowing myself to be angry, um, which I don't know what the proper thing to do was. I don't know if maybe it was the proper thing to do at that time, but I don't think it was.
Interesting.
Because it kind of allowed the anger to swell and just develop and grow and grow and grow. And it took me a long time to get over that.
So what did you do to get over it?
Um, there's a few things. One, I think it's facing the suffering instead of, because if you don't face it, it just multiplies. Right. So what I would try and do is suppress that feelings because you don't want to face it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's easier just to try and forget, just to stuff it down, just to, put it to the side. And, it's so important instead to face it, because, I have a bit of PTSD. Well, I do have PTSD from it. And instead of, you know, even now I was considering just not talking about because it's a difficult thing to talk about. It's
Yeah,
not
for
an
sure.
easy thing to bring up. It's not an easy thing to um, discuss, especially with a lot of, whoever in here's listening. But it's I found it so much more difficult to just stuff it down. Even at work with people, like colleagues and stuff like that, or other people, and they ask how many kids you have, and you say two, and then the follow-up question, right? And so instead of just saying, I'd say something like, well, he's with his friends, or he's, they ask how old he is, and I said, oh, who knows? So, trying to be funny as if a dad who doesn't know his kids, right?
Yeah.
But instead now, it's at the point where it's okay. Well, you have to face it. It's uncomfortable. It is, but it's better than stuffing it down because then
Right.
it
Yeah.
just swells and it grows. Because and it multiplies, and then later it becomes much more difficult. So I'm trying to do that more now. I'm even in church, like when I at the Anglican church I go to, and this in most churches. I mean, they have the cross at the front of the sanctuary because you face the suffering,
Yeah. Oh, that's a good
right?
point.
And so that's what I've been trying to do a bit more, and I feel like that is helping out the anger a lot more because you're attacking it head on rather than just putting it to the side, and then it swells up and then it expresses itself later in something. Because I'm pretty particular, right? I can feel the anger building and I can feel the pressure on my shoulders. And a lot of time what I have to do is, again, even with my wife, with Kelsey, I'll shut her away. I'll push her out, and I'll just get angry and kind of get, maybe not mopey, but very solemn, right? And not want to deal with her, not want to deal with Aylin, not want to deal with anybody really. And so I found instead what I've had to do is I've had to push through that and just go to Kelsey instead. Just get a quick hug, or just explain, I'm very angry. I'm very irritable right now. And that usually helps it quite a bit. Addressing the anger before the anger addresses me, if
Nice.
that makes sense.
Hmm. I mean, there's a really interesting part of the Stormlight archives, and so for anybody who's listening to the audiobook or reading those books, I'm about to like reveal a major spoiler. So shut the podcast off now if you don't want it. But I imagine that there probably isn't a lot of crossover between the people that like your books, Terrence, and the people that like the books that I like to read.
No.
So we're probably fine. But there's a character in the story who has a really dark past, and he's trying to come to terms with it. And there's actually, there's like, it's medieval fantasy, right? So there's like gods and stuff like that, and one of the gods comes to him and says, he's an evil god, he's the god of anger. His name's Odium. And he says, if you like, if and this is his thing. Like he'll take people's pain, emotional pain from them,
Mm.
as long as they serve him, right? That's kind of his trade-off. And as long as they stay close to him and stay serving to him, they actually find themselves like completely at peace because he
Mm.
takes all their suffering away. But he's an evil person and he uses people to do horrible things.
Mm.
So this one of these main characters who's like almost crushed by this mistake that he made in his past. Like it's really awful.
Mm.
He accidentally like killed his wife in an outburst of rage and like a bunch of crazy stuff like that, became an alcoholic. And there's one really cool moment in the book because it turns out that Odium has actually been like Odium, this evil god, has actually been like cultivating all these horrible things in this guy's life because he wants
Oh,
to use him as his champion,
wow.
because he's a really powerful character. He's like he's renowned on the battlefield and kind of that kind of thing for being like a very
Mm.
evil person. He's trying to turn his life around, and there's a moment where it's like the test of his character. And
Mm.
Odium, like, this guy is mine now, and he says, "Give me your pain."
Mm.
And then Dalinar is his name. And at this point in his life, he's like in his 50s or something like that, or late 40s. And he says, "No, you cannot have my pain." And it's like this moment where you're like, is he going to give in? Like, what's going to happen? Right. Because, and he says, "No, you cannot have my pain. I accept like what I've done and my suffering and stuff." And this god Odium, who like can see the future and stuff, is totally like, what the heck just happened?
Mm.
So it was like, it's a really cool moment where he kind of like accepts that, he just like embraces what he's done, forgives himself. Um, and then as a result becomes extra powerful, because that's the way that medieval fantasy
Mm.
portrays, emotional and mental strength is usually through magic or something like that.
Right.
But
That's really interesting. So the book you're reading, it's medieval, not medieval fantasy. Sorry.
yeah, it's medieval
Oh,
fantasy.
interesting. Um, Going back to writing.
Sure.
No, it's good. I think this is a good conversation so far. I was really worried, bringing you on here.
Yeah, I'm a difficult guest. Sometimes I just, I don't know. What's something that a bad guest would do? Flip the table,
Yeah.
scream
Okay.
profanities.
Going back to writing, I think one of the greatest challenges after I wrote the book was just figuring out this self-publishing. Luckily, there's lots of resources online, and I'm on a great Facebook group. If for anybody who's interested, it's 20 books to 50K. So 20 books to 50K. So basically, the guy who started this group, when he started publishing, self-publishing his books, he's making $6 a day after advertising and all that from this one book. So he thought to himself, well, if he can make, I think it was if he was at 20 books. Oh no, I can't remember how much it was. But anyways, basically the premise was that if he scaled that up, then he could make 50,000 a month,
Oh
or
wow.
50,000 a month. So he got pretty successful in being able to do that, and he's been able to scale it up. And so there's tons of resources in this Facebook group. There's tons of Excel files, documents, how-tos, videos, and everything. It's such a great resource that I go to all the time. Even now, I posted a question in there because Dad's been on me to get my will in order. So I was thinking,
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
so I was looking at that and I was like, well, what happens if, say, something happens to me? What's going to happen to the books, like the income from the books? So I posted a question in there, and so people have been giving me some resources and different, lawyers I can reach out to might be able to answer my questions and such. So it's such a great resource. But from there, like, what was really frustrating after I published, or after I finished writing the book, was getting it published, self-published. Well, I did try traditional publishing. No one was interested in me. I tried maybe 150 different publishers. No one was interested.
Holy smokes, 150.
Yeah, but I think that's fine though. From everything that I've seen, even if you do get a traditional publisher, there's no guarantee. Like, unless it has to be one of the big ones, right? Because I've seen some of the traditional publishing sites where again, in this group I'm in, this guy saying I was with 3 different publishers. One went bankrupt. The other one faked their death.
What?
I don't know if it's to get away from him or not. He didn't specify, but
I need to know more about that story.
right. So it's not a guarantee, even if you get with a traditional publisher. And so what I found was doing the self-publishing is much better aim for me, because you get to control all the creative, you get to control all of that, which is great. But also, so the formatting and everything like that was so difficult, but thankfully there's so many resources that you can turn to, because when you're doing it, like what I've done is through the Kindle program on Amazon, which also does the paperbook, so ebook and the paperbook together. But there's so much you need to know about formatting. Luckily, I've got it down now, so I can just copy the format when I go in to write the next book. But when I did it the first time, I was so frustrated. I almost gave up.
Oh, really? You'd written the whole book, and then on the formatting side, you were like, "Oh, I'm done now."
Yeah. But because I think doing the self-publishing is so frustrating, because all you want to do as an author is write. But what happens is there's a business, right? Because you have to do all the advertising, you have to figure that out, which is really frustrating, and it's always changing. Like, I have an ad right now that's going, and it's always changing, and the cost per click sometimes just skyrockets. And I can't figure out why. Facebook has been telling me that it's, if the cost per click goes up, then it's usually better, because it's likely getting someone who will click and follow through. What I've found is that just hasn't been the case for me. When my cost per clicks go up, then my sales plummet.
Oh, weird.
And so usually what happens is, so I got another ad going, and that one stayed pretty level. So I've got 2 ads, and that one's staying level, and that one seems to be doing all right. I don't know why that one is, the cost per click is staying low. I haven't done anything different. But I think the frustrating side when you're doing the self-publishing is just that you're running a business. Like, you have to, like I said, figure out all the author advertising, get all the editing done, getting all that, which can take up so much time. Plus, I'm very bad at the social media. I hate it. I absolutely hate doing the social media. I hate posting. I hate bugging people.
So the social media thing, I can relate to a lot, not with writing, because I haven't really done much marketing for my book at all. Really, it's self-published, but I just wanted to write it, and it didn't really go anywhere with ads. But with my like ukulele group, right, the music group that I have,
What's it called?
Brave Balloons.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've been working on lately, and I also strongly dislike posting anything on social media on a consistent basis, but that's how the algorithm works, and that's how you get likes. I've been pretty laid back with it, because I just write the music for the sake of writing music. But we just recently came out with an album, and I was like, what if I just came up with something really simple that I could post every day and not really put a lot of effort into it, and that way the algorithm's just like, oh, this page is posting every day, so let's push it to the front, and then just more people see the album. And because I was finding there are even people that I knew, and that either didn't know I even had a band, or didn't know that we had released an album. And so I was like, it's strange that I've been talking about this for so long with so many people, and there's still people who don't know. So I was like, it'd be nice to just not have to think about it. So the thing about Facebook is it lets you schedule posts ahead of time, right? If you use publishing tools or Creative Studio or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I created a spreadsheet where I just came up with a bunch of posts that I could make every day up until the end of September, and it's August now, and I came up with this in July. And so I would spend an hour and do a couple weeks of posts, and I haven't quite finished yet. I still gotta hop back on and finish more. But anytime I have an hour to spare, I'm like, oh, I'll just write I have a spreadsheet already decided, right? This day you're gonna post a link to this thing, and this day you're gonna say something funny. And so just on the day,
I haven't seen anything funny yet.
Yeah. Well, they're not in the schedule yet, obviously. So yeah, I just go through that list, and then I'm like, okay, well, this is what needs to happen on this day. So I just write up a quick thing and post a link. And it could definitely take me a lot more time where I could be like, oh, I need to make sure I have this link properly for both Facebook and Instagram and like tag these people correctly. And the publishing tools are not great at tagging people, even on Facebook. Something about trying to tag somebody, it doesn't, when you're using publishing tools, it doesn't recognize who your friends list is. So
Odd.
I'll like try and search, like if I searched your name, for example, like Terrence Williamson, I would get like all the Terrence Williamsons in the world, but it
Oh
only
yeah.
shows like a small list. You can't even scroll through all of them. So I'm like, I can't actually pick the
Mm.
one that I want to pick. And then you post and then it publishes and it doesn't have the tag in it anyways. It just has the
Yeah.
text. So yeah, it's been a little bit frustrating. And yesterday I was like, oh, I should do some Facebook polls or just like stupid things, right? Like one of them was, what's your favorite shape of balloon? And the one shape was like dad bod, and the other shape was like upside down, like nonsensical answers, right? But because I pre-scheduled this post, the poll went live and then ended immediately. So it just posted, it was like your post went live, and I went to check it out, and it was like 0%, 0%. This poll has ended. Okay, I guess I tried to edit it, it wouldn't let me fix it. So yeah, it's not always super great.
Yeah.
And I could spend a lot more time trying to like wrestle with it. But again, I've found that because I'm a perfectionist, I can err on the side of not being perfect, and most people don't really notice. So I've been doing a lot more of like, this doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't have all the proper links. In this case, I'm not posting on Instagram, even though that's where I get more likes from. I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care enough about this to put that much effort into it. But yeah, just coming up with a spreadsheet and a schedule ahead of time, and then writing all of these posts, and it take an hour to do a couple of weeks into the future, has definitely helped a lot, because I'm like, I just don't have to think about it. I don't know if I'll do it forever, but at least until September.
Yeah, I tried doing the scheduling thing too. There's a bunch of different apps online that kind of help you organize and schedule it and give you different ideas. But I just found it so tedious.
Yeah, it really is.
And that's not to say, don't mistake me, I love interacting with my fans. They're the sweetest people ever. They're very, very nice, and they're always sending me messages and incredibly nice comments. And so that is really uplifting when I do post something and you get the nicest thing ever. Like yeah, I'll read to you actually something that someone just said. This person said, I read the book, had a very hard time putting it down. So good, of course. For those of you who haven't read it, for the trilogy, Terrence is definitely my favorite author by far. It's like this person I've never met.
Was it Mom?
Yeah. Well, her name's Mary, but it's not Mom.
Oh, that's hilarious. His mom says the same thing. Oh, I just can't put this book down.
Yeah. And so, yeah, my mom's my biggest fan too. But there's so many, these people who put out the nicest messages. You're my favorite author and stuff like that. It's like, but I got like such nice fans, and so that's really good with social media. I'm not dealing with a bunch of poo-poos.
Poo-poos.
But I
you
did
have a daughter when.
Well, funny enough, I did have one person who was really upset with me. It's absolutely hilarious. So the majority of my fans and people who like my pages are women, and it's usually between the age of 45 and up. There's a good chunk of younger people, but the majority are older than 45. And so
they must really like your books then, because I can't think of any reason why all these women would be following you around.
And so, I mean, they're the best fan base ever. They're so wonderful. There's amazing ladies and gentlemen that are on there. They're fantastic. But I had this one person that just commented. It was a while back. I posted something about my upcoming book, and they said, "Please stop tagging me in your in your solicitations." And they're so mad at me for posting about my book all the time. So I said, "I'm sorry to hear that." I said, "You're welcome to unfollow me if you'd like. I didn't mean to bother you or anything like that. I was very what's the word? Put my customer service hat on."
Yeah.
And then they said, oh, "I've never followed you before. I have no idea who you are." And I was like, well, unfortunately, I can't just pick people out to follow me.
Right. Yeah.
At one point in time, you did follow my page. You liked it or followed it. It might have been by accident. But anyways, we went back and forth. and she's like, maybe it's a she or he. I think it's one of those combined names, like so and so and so and so last name.
Oh yeah, there's like two people.
Yeah, no profile picture, right? Someone who's grandma or grandpa, right? Live just on Facebook to check out their family and such. So anyways, back and forth, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes of me going back and forth with this person, trying to get them to figure out how to unfollow me. And I've never spent so much time trying to get rid of a customer.
That's really funny.
Yeah. But I mean, like the entire time, I think that helps being in the job that I'm like my full-time job in insurance really helps because then it helps me with the customer service side, right? Because I'm very, this is the part where I'm not a good writer, or I'm.
You're a good writer, but not a good speaker. Yeah.
There we go. And so, yeah,
So
being customer service.
between like the two customer groups that you have your like insurance people and then your book
Mm-hmm.
folks.
Yeah.
Which of those two do you find to have like the most difficult customers?
Oh, insurance side, 100%.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I've had, it's kind of funny because I was really worried about, I'm so scared about about people's perception, right?
Of you?
I scour the reviews daily to see if there's any updated reviews, and 90% of the reviews, maybe I think it's 96, 97% of the reviews are all positive.
Yeah,
And
but
there's,
it's the 4% that like drive you crazy.
yeah. But I mean, I've been very lucky with the fact that even on my ads and stuff, I've only got a few people who have been pretty right wing, either in the fact of, they think the Holocaust was a good thing, or
Oh,
something
wow.
ridiculous like they think the Holocaust never happened. I've had a few people who've been mad that I've been writing about the Holocaust, but I've explained it. There's so few of my generation understands what's happening, and we um, we are educated more by fiction than we are by nonfiction, right? So someone who's reading a fictional book would get lots of education or that way because there's such a what's the word? There's a tie to it.
So
Um,
when you say we're educated more by fiction than nonfiction, do you mean to say that as in like that's the current state of our education system and it's flawed, or do you mean like that's the natural state by which we learn? We learn better through fiction.
yeah, so a natural state. So it's more natural for us to learn through fiction, which is why storytelling has been such a powerful tool for all time, and that's
Right.
why it's always been used to tell moral stories or moral
Truth.
truths. Uh, um, and so I've had some customers turned around because I've explained to them that I'm not writing it because obviously the title Mistress of Auschwitz can be a bit. Man, I'm not articulate today. I'm really struggling with my words.
No, you're doing fine.
It can be a bit not provoking, but it definitely grabs attention, right? Um, and I didn't create this title. It's a title that was given to her by Rudolf Haas, who is the commandant. I was going to say commandant. But, it's one of those things when you're reading it so much, it's kind of got in your head, but the actual pronunciation is commandant.
Yeah, if you learn a word by reading it, it's very easy to never pronounce it correctly.
Right, like origin.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of those in our language.
Yeah. So I've had a few customers that have been able to turn around that way and explain to them my intentions for writing it. There's so few of my generation who knows what happened or why it happened or the extent of what happened. And so it's been good that way. There's a few people, yeah, like I said, there's a few pretty right wingers that I've had to deal with, but it's pretty easy if it's blatant and they're really out there. Then I just ban them from this page, and that's
Oh,
easy.
nice.
Yeah.
Exile.
Yeah. But other than that, I've been very lucky that it's all been really overwhelmingly positive. But again, my mind focuses on the negative, right?
Yeah.
And
Why do you think that is?
I think it's natural for someone to focus on the negative. And I think again, it's all about the survival. Like it goes back to the base thing. Like where do you stand in society? Where do you stand? How are you perceived? Is so important to us as humans. Because that's how we fit in. That's how we do our social status.
Yeah, I was talking to a therapist the other day, and she was mentioning how that is actually the natural state of
Mm,
humans is to um is because I was working through some like anxiety stuff that I was having with her, and she said it's very natural for humans to focus on the negative things that are affecting them or the negative things that could happen
mm,
because it's that like underlying basic survival instinct to look for danger and try and prevent it from happening, which
mm,
is really what anxiety is. It's a survival instinct. And it's just when you're getting it in all kinds of other areas of your life, then that means it's overactive and it's a little bit hard to control and get it to understand this isn't actually like a life threatening issue.
mm,
Um, and so, yeah, I can see how like the anxiety that comes up from the 4% of people that don't like you is like, well, I need to make sure that like this is a threat potentially to my safety, and I need to make sure that
mhm.
I'm um I'm okay, and that
Yeah.
these 4% of people aren't going to cause me to, you know, be exiled from my society or like have people shun me or whatever. And it's unfortunately not a rational system in our biology. It's very irrational
Mm,
because it's the whole it needs to be actually because you don't have time to think about what to do when a tiger is like running right at you, right? That's
right.
it's that's what anxiety is. It's like, or like your house is on fire, you don't think
Mm,
about it, you run out the door.
mm,
um and so like it's a survival instinct and it's very important. I think a lot of people actually work very hard to like they see anxiety as like an enemy and it's like a bad thing that need to get
mm,
rid of their lives, but it's get rid of from their lives. But it's actually like a very important part of yourself, and it's just often overactive. So
right.
it's what I've learned to do is see it as like a positive thing in me that just needs um, a little bit of like, hey, that's not really like, thank you for thank you for turning on the alarm system. This is not a life threatening system, so I'm going to try and turn off the alarm system
Mm,
now. Um,
mm.
yeah.
Interesting. Well, it's so strange how we are as humans because this way that we're living is so unnatural to us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just because well, like, why do you think that is? Because of, like, how fast technology has advanced, like, that our biology hasn't had a chance to catch up to it?
I think so. Um, and I think it's also kind of stay connected because it's also very important for us to like it stayed that way because it is beneficial for helping us move up the ladder, right? The social ladder, the hierarchy, whatever we want to call it. Because I'm a very task oriented person, and I have tons of anxiety to get things done, right? And so that is what fuels me to be writing because I'm like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to get this chapter done, I got to get it, and I can't just push it back, right? I can't procrastinate about it. I can't push it to the side. And so that anxiety helps me further myself in that sense. It's a different type of anxiety, but it's still something that, sits on your shoulders, right?
Yeah, it's emotional pressure to get something done.
Yeah. Um, but I mean, even if you look, not even 200 years ago, at the poor state that we're in, like I just saw, I'm on this Instagram page about like historical photos and all that stuff. Like 1910, so 110 111 years ago, there's a photo of these kids who are 6 7 8 years old working in the mine.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
100
that's nuts.
111 years ago. And go back another 100 years before that, and the insane amount of poverty that the whole world was in. The difference between the bourgeoisie and the working class was so extreme, right? The
Yeah.
difference between the rich and the poor was so extreme. And the middle class just exploded with the industrial revolution. And ever since then, we've made lots of strides to go forward. And basically the middle class right now is essentially what runs the world. in most cases, um, especially when it comes to pop culture and all that, right? So I think, yeah, our biology is still a bit behind, hasn't quite caught up yet.
So what do we need to do to catch our biology up?
That's an excellent question. We should ask a biologist.
Yeah, maybe there's some sort of vaccine that we can inject ourselves with.
Maybe that's what this whole thing was about.
Yeah, well, we need to inject people with a biological enhancement fluid, and there's no way we're going to convince people to do that. So how about we create a variant of SARS that spreads?
Well, that Elon Musk Neuralink, have you heard about this?
Yeah, I have. It sounds like a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
I don't.
what is it again, though? What are the details? I forget.
You know what? I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to do basically what my understanding of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I grew up with you, and that's all you ever did.
Yeah, just butcher all the facts. It's like going back to this, like when I said Yatsu Novello is pronounced. I actually don't know that. I just
Yeah,
went.
that's everybody. This is who I grew up with. I consistently fall into this trap of relying on my big brother for information, and he just pretends to know things.
Yeah, no.
But maybe I'm the fool because they keep doing
it. Yeah. So from my understanding of the Neuralink, it's to cure depression, to cure depression, anxiety, a lot of other issues that we have mentally. I think it's also to communicate. I guess it wouldn't be telekinesis, but it communicate electronically. Like you can just send thoughts, right, instead of having to communicate
Yeah, it
verbally.
sounds so dangerous because, like, if it's to cure anxiety and depression, like, I mean, maybe I'm just gonna sound like an old fart, but like for somebody to that's hackable. It's a piece of
Oh,
software that's hackable, and
yeah.
somebody like now you could like imagine what prison might look like in the future, where it's just like you just change a setting in their brain, and now they're depressed all the time.
Right? That's a good point. I never thought about that. My thinking was, man, if I get it, my wife can't get it. So if she knows what I'm thinking all the time, I'm in deep trouble.
Why? What are you thinking all the time, Terrence?
Nothing bad. Nothing bad. No, I love my wife very much, and it's our 12-year anniversary today. Oh my goodness, it's our 12-year anniversary today.
Happy birthday! I mean, happy anniversary.
Thank you. Yeah, 12 years ago. That's incredible. Yeah, I got married. What am I now? I'm 33.
12 years ago.
Yeah, 21. I got married. 21.
Oh wow,
that's insane. And I think there's a benefit to getting married young. I think you grow together, and you kind of, because at my age now, oh man, I'm terrified of Kelsey and I were ever, God forbid, split up or anything like that. Like I would be without any chance in the dating pool because I'm so set in my ways right now.
Right. Yeah.
Like at 33, I'm so set in my ways. If I meet someone, I'm not willing to change for them.
That's fair. I mean, the other way of looking at it is when you're like more set in your ways and mature, um, there's sort of like more adult like coming together. So I think there's pros and cons to each, and I think different people need different things because I have
That's
some
true.
friends that got married really young and they're like, I couldn't have done it any other way. But a lot of the single friends that I have are like, I'm so thankful that I didn't get married to this other person like when I was younger because I know so much more about myself now.
Yeah, it's true. I was looking back the other day and I was thinking about that because I mean, I've only, like, Kelsey's been my first official girlfriend, but I was thinking about some other romances. That sounds worse than it is. It's not euphemistic. It's literally other romances that I had, and it's like, oh my goodness, life would have been so terrible.
Oh, who are they? What are their names? Let's talk about them.
Well, they're very nice people. They're wonderful, but it's just like we would not mesh at all.
Yeah.
Even my wife and I, we don't mesh at all. But I mean, no, we're pretty good together, which is nice. We're lucky that way. Well, why don't? How long have we been talking?
Too long. I think it's been over an hour. I think
Yeah, about an hour and a half.
it's lunchtime here. Getting hungry.
Yeah. Well, why don't we end by you telling us where we can find the book? Or do you want to tell us a bit more about the book and then where you can find it?
Yeah. So the basic idea here. You know what? I'll just read the. I'll read the back of the book
Here you go.
because I actually really like the way I wrote this, and I read it to a few friends, and they're like, "That's really awesome." Okay, so here's Children of the White Flame. Trained to fight as gods amongst men, the Knights of the Sacred North were charged with the protection of its gates. For centuries, they defended it from the devilish armies of the south, and not once did the bastion succumb to a breach, for they were powerful conjurers of a strange white fire. But at last their resolve was shattered when a new threat approached, that of the loss of their flame. It was taken by an enemy new to them, and they were forced to retaliate, naked of their power. This is the account of the Knights of the North and of the kindlers of the torches of white. This is the story of the children of the white flame.
Nice.
Bam.
I almost want to read it again.
No, you don't. Don't read it again. No, when I came home for Christmas, I brought my book with me because I was like, oh, I'll read on the plane. And like a few pages in, I was like, I don't know if I can do this again. But when I first wrote it, like I read it back to myself after I had it in soft cover form and read it all in one sitting. And I was like, I love this so much. So it was a nice feeling to like create something that you really like. So yeah, it's a short read. Most people can read it in one sitting. So give it a shot for a fun little story of a knight and his family and friends. So
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Everybody go buy Paradiso. Is that your newest one?
Daughters of Marburg is the newest
Daughters
one.
of Marburg.
Yeah, it's this is the one. It's the newest one. Is it backwards in your camera?
Nope. It says
Okay.
Terrence D. Williamson at the bottom. Is it backwards in yours?
Yeah. Yeah, Daughters of Marburg. I think, you know what? I think I didn't do the marketing properly on that one. Because I was trying to advertise it and I didn't get, it's selling passively because it's through them other books. I can't advertise that one just by itself. It's not working. And I think I marketed it poorly. I should have called it Daughters of Resistance or something, or even in the blurb for the description, I should have put it more prominently, because it's about resistance fighters during World War II, or actually, sorry, just before World War II. And I think I should have made that more clear in the blurb, and I think I still can do that, because I wanted to hide so much of the information so I didn't spoil anything. But I think in doing that, I took out most of the interest as well.
Yeah, that's a difficult balance with marketing, but here's an opportunity for people to learn that this book is more than it appears. And you guys, it's not like Little Women or something like that. It's like these are resistance fighters, and they're girl power. Go girl power. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. This was fun.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Well, sometimes things are just fun ones.
Yeah,
just kidding. No, that'd be great.
We'll see. Well, I'll check my calendar.
Yeah, I'm doing podcasts like for the rest of my life every day now, actually. So I don't think I'm free.
Okay, take care.
Bye.